And welcome back to this episode of Paint Society. My name is Brian, and I'm going to teach you how you can tackle your own home projects right in your own garage. And odds are your panel probably has some damage. So let's make some. And let's go ahead and put the classic door ding. Ouch. And a big old scratch. Ouch. And one more ding. Ouch. Now I'm going to show you how to repair and paint. For this step, we're going to need a sanding block. We already have ours ready, and we're going to be using a K240. We're using all Eagle abrasive sandpaper. And all we want to do is first identify the area and give it a nice sanding. This will help create a nice scratch for our filler for the small dents. If it's a small dent like this, there's no need to do any hammer or dolly work. All you gotta do is sand it and give it a light glaze finish, and you'll be good to go. Now this is guide coat, and if you want to use black spray paint, it's fine, but this won't clog the paper as easily. We'll just spray a little bit on the surface, and here we'll identify our areas that we still need to sand or add filler. And here we can see we have a little mark still, our scratch, and another little mark. So we'll keep on feathering those. And feathering is a term that we use to smooth out the scratch and the different layers that it might have. So we're gonna feather out this as much as we can, and we might even break through to the surface. That's not a problem. We can go ahead and add primer later. Now, there's gonna be many times where it's really dusty. And if you don't have a compressor, I like this little nifty tool that you can use to blow and clean everything. And this is the Wolfbox Super Powered Turbo Fan. This is a MegaFlow 200. And take a look at that. So we have multiple different tips that we can use, and right out of the box, we'll check it out. And we'll power it on, and we can see it has 3 different fan levels: high, medium, and low. And on the MegaFlow 200, you can go ahead and change out the battery easily and have one ready to go. You'll find that the tips come in different sizes and shapes, as well as a nifty carrying case, some brushes, and your charger inside. This thing is super powerful, so let's blow everything off. Perfect. Now you want to give it a good cleaning. For this, I'm going to be using the pre-painting wipes, but you can use rubbing alcohol. It's probably going to be a lot cheaper than this. We'll clean the surface off so it's nice and clean before we put a little bit of filler into those little scratches. Next up, we have our premium finishing glaze. We have our new spreader and our hardener. Let me show you how I mix it up. You could take a paint stick or cut a small spreader to get some of it out. Perfect, and that's all we'll need. Next up, the hardener, because the filler will not dry unless we add the catalyst. For me, what I'd like to do is I'll find the middle of it and I'll move towards the edge. And that should be enough, so about half the way. Now, when we mix it, I like to fold it. Folding helps take away any of the air bubbles. And I like to mix it on a mixing palette. Instead of a piece of cardboard, sometimes a piece of cardboard can introduce air bubbles since it is porous. Although, it still does work if you're on a budget. Once everything is one uniform color, we gotta move quick because this is gonna dry within a couple minutes. And when you apply it, we're gonna wanna apply it in tight passes. You're not gonna get it all in one. You're gonna have to go over it a couple times. Also, keep in mind, this is a glazing putty, so it's for very superficial damage. Don't expect to fill big door dings or big sand scratches or anything like that with it. And that's it. We're gonna leave it alone, and we're gonna let this dry for a good 10 minutes. Check it out and see if it's ready for its next step of sanding. And while that dries, a lot of you are gonna wanna use the lacquer-based filler, and don't do that. Although in this video, we are using the cheapest of the cheap products to get the job done at home, there's some things I'm not gonna let you skimp on. If you go for that pinhole filler, we've all seen it before, it's not gonna be thick enough to fill the areas that we need, and it's going to shrink, and it's gonna be really tough to work with. So for this particular step, I need you guys to use the 2K product, and 2K means 2 parts. We have the filler and the catalyst. I think now it's almost ready to be sanded, so let's move on to the next step. And 10 minutes later, it's ready to go. Now, a quick tip, you can use some lacquer thinner and gently, lightly just go over the surface. This is not going to harm the body filler, but it's gonna remove that tackiness that dries on the surface of the glaze. That's going to clog up all of your sandpaper. Now we can get right into sanding with a P180 grit, and that is going to smooth it out much quicker. And when we sand, we want to do our best to sand in an X pattern. That means going one way, one direction, and coming back and doing it the other way. And this is going to help it keep it as smooth and flat as possible. And if you're doing longer strokes, it's not going to hurt as well, but make sure those longer strokes are more of an X pattern. Your first few passes, it's really going to eat up the sandpaper, so you might need to change it because it's still cutting through that initial phase. And it's important to keep your sandpaper and your panel clean. And there's really no quick way around this. If you want this as straight as possible, you're going to want to do this all by hand anyways. So just keep on blocking. Then you're going to get to a point where it's starting to really feel smooth. Remember, the goal of the project is to not sand it till it's only still in the damage area, but basically what you're going to do is you're going to smooth out that whole entire area so the transition is nice. And once you feel it's completely smooth, let's head back to our guide coat so we can get a visual aid. Now for this step, you can be between 180 and 220, in and around there. But with glaze, I never like to cut it with 80. It's just too aggressive to have to recover from if you're doing this at home. So we're gonna go ahead and sand, and we can see here, it still needs a lot more sanding so that this feathers into the original panel, feathering and smoothing out into the original panel. What this guide coat will also do is it will show us if we have any areas of concern that are low or still need a little bit more attention. And we'll show you the next step, refining it, how the guide coat helps out as well. We can see here, there's no black left in any of the body filler, and we see it filled in these areas, so we're good to go. Let's use our guide coat one more time and refine it for primer. So the next step is very important, because if you don't put your guide coat down and refine that filler again to a P320, especially if you're at home, then the filler primer is going to have a hard time filling up those scratches, and the end result is you're going to see it in your paint work. So let's go ahead and spray it on one more time, and this is going to give it a nice refined finish for our filler primer to go right over. And now we're going to extend it a little bit more, probably about 2 or 3 inches past the area of the body filler, so we can prepare the area for the primer. And as a second option, we can use a maroon scuff pad. Just makes it a little bit easier for those body lines to conform to. And we'll just give it a wipe and a blow. And it's ready for primer. Now when we prime, we only need to prime around 2 or 3 inches past our body filler area. Since the original paint is okay, the clear coat is in perfect condition, all that needs later is a scuff. So we're getting overspray on it, it's not to worry. We'll handle that in the next step. And next we're going to be using our Duplicolor Perfect Match Filler Primer. Now again, these are lacquer primers and they're not the best quality, but we're trying to keep the cost down. So we'll spray this on, we'll put 2 or 3 coats on, we'll see how it looks, let it dry, and then we'll sand it. We'll now apply the first coat. And we're going to apply it medium wet, not too wet because we don't want any runs, and we'll go about 2 or 3 inches past our repair and our sanded area. And just like that, we're going to let it dry. It might be a little transparent, but we'll get that picked up in a second or third coat. The main thing we want to do is allow it to dry, so when we put those following coats on, it can build up so we have a nice surface that we can sand. And a lot of you might ask, well, why is that a cheap primer or not a good primer? Well, again, it's lacquer based. So what does that mean? You can wipe it right off. This is a 1K product that doesn't have a hardener built into it. Well, what's the alternative then? The alternative would be a 2K aerosol that has the red popper that goes on the bottom to break the bladder inside. Now, this is a clear coat we'll be using later, and that's something I don't want you to skimp on, even though it's a little bit pricey, around 40 bucks per can. It's really gonna show a nice, beautiful finish. Now, with the primer here for something small, we can get away with it. Now, talking of which, we're about 5 minutes later. Let's put on that second coat. And we're not going to change anything. The same exact thing going over the same exact surface. just building up the surface ever so slightly. This time, we'll give it 10 minutes, and then we'll put the third coat on. And 10 minutes later, we're ready for that third coat. Perfect. Now, let's talk about dry times. Now, you're probably thinking, you got that fancy air blower, why don't you just blow it dry? Well, I will tell you, in my 20 years of painting experience, the number one thing I've learned is patience and allowing things to cure naturally. So, I'm gonna go get some lunch, and I'll be back here in about 2 hours, and then at that point, it's going to be cured enough to sand and then paint. So we're back here 2 hours later and it's nice and smooth. Now you never want to sand your primer prematurely or else you'll rip it and you won't get the build and the sanding smoothness that you need. So what's the next step? Let me show you right now. And for the sanding step, we're going to be using the Assorted Sheets Job Pack. And right now, we're interested in the K600. So we'll tear off a sheet and we'll put it onto our block. Once again, we'll spray our guide coat to see exactly where we need to sand. This paper is designed to be used dry, so there's no need for water sanding. We'll try the same exact diagonal surface sanding to get it nice and smooth. And we're gonna keep on sanding until all that black guide coat is removed, and that's gonna show us exactly where we need to sand more or if we're good to go. And that's all there is. And since this is a lacquer-based primer, it does clog up the sheet a little bit more than we'd like. So we'll have a little bit of water on a towel and we can use the squeeze, and that's gonna help keep the sandpaper a little bit cleaner since this cheaper actual primer is gonna clog it up a little bit more than a high build, high quality would. And that's all you need to do. You see it's keeping it much more cleaner. And a little rag here with some water in it, we can drip it in when we need. And there we go. Then we can take that same towel and just dry it up and get all of that residue off. Then we'll blow it dry. And tear off a clean microfiber. I like these microfiber tear off sheets because they don't leave any lint and you can reuse them. They're great for painting. Now that we have our primer addressed, we need to sand the good clear coat. Now think of your good clear coat as your primer, but we can't put paint right over it because it needs to be scuffed and given a key or a scratch, a very fine, so that your paint can stick to it. So let's show you how to do that. And that's when the job pack comes into play. We'll take that K600, a new piece, and we have that hand pad that conforms to the different edges and different curves. Then we can just come in here and give it a nice little scuff. Perfect, and once you see that it's completely doled out, then you know it's ready for the next step. And then just continue on to all the shiny parts. And make sure you feel it every once in a while because what you can't see, you can feel. And it's always good to have another tool on deck. I also like the maroon scuff pad for around those edges as well. Sometimes this does a little bit better job getting into all those little tight areas, and it keeps a nice scratch going and it doesn't wear out easily. So using a combination of a couple different sandpapers will really help you out when it comes to preparing for paint. And we'll just finish up here and getting the edges and then move on to our hand pad. And again, if you need a little bit of water, it will help out as well. Now for our next step, we need to know the difference in the finishing. Since we're going to be using a blue metallic, we want to refine this in such a way that the metallic will lay in a very fine sand scratch. Well, although a K600 is probably going to be okay for a solid color without metallics, this has a metallic in it and we're going to be using the K800. Now what I'm going to do, since it's a finer grit and we'll have a little bit more difficulty to sand, is we're going to use a little bit of water resistance the whole way through with this, go over the whole entire thing, and then it's going to be ready for paint. So for this, we'll just use our hand pad and we'll use just a little water assistance to help lubricate and to move it over the whole entire panel. We've been using all hand tools to get us to this point. And that's all it takes, is just any direction with this, because we're not blocking it. We just want to smooth out the panel. All right, and that will do it. Next up, let's talk about cleaning. We'll go ahead and take our mildly clean rag that's a little bit dry, and we'll go ahead and wipe that down completely. Now we're getting ready for the painting process where everything needs to be clean. I'm gonna change out to the smaller diameter tip so we can get a little bit more of a focused airstream. That way it will dry a little bit quicker. We're outside and we're ready to clean. I'm gonna be using the pre-painting wipes, but they're a little bit pricey. If you want something a little bit cheaper that works just as good, you can use the 70% isopropyl alcohol and that will be just fine for you. I like these because they're convenient and I do a lot of jobs. And for color, we're gonna be using the Perfect Match Duplicolor. Now, remember that these are very limited colors, so if you're looking for a perfect match for your vehicle, you might need to get it mixed up, and for that, you can hit up Eastwood. But this might suit you if you're looking to change the color on your project or your motorcycle or whatever it might be. And I'm gonna show you exactly how to do that right now. Now, when you go to paint, you need to keep a rag because it's gonna drip and splatter and you need to wipe it every so often. Also, watch that glove tip because it will get in front of that nozzle and it will splatter as well. I'm gonna teach you the quadrant method. See, the problem with this is the fan is very, very small. And with a fan that is very small, it's going to leave streaks and you cannot paint this like a traditional spray gun. So if we work a small area at a time, do different quadrants and break it up and move fastly, then we can change the game with these aerosols and have a great finish. So we want to keep it moving very, very fast, working no more than a 10-inch area. Perfect. Moving along, we're just gonna keep a 10-inch area going and we're gonna keep it wet with a very, very, very tight overlap in of around, I would say, 80%. This will ensure that we don't have as much striping or modeling in the finish and we're spraying it wet. A wet paint job is gonna mean a smoother finish in the end. Making sure to dry that nozzle as we carry on those small little quadrants. And this actually works very, very well if you follow the same exact method I'm using. And don't worry if it doesn't look too good. You can see all the splatter that happens from these spray cans. These are not the best spray cans, but they're our only option that we have right now if you're just going to the store. And I'm gonna show you right now how we can make it work. And don't forget those edges. And here we can see so far, our bodywork looks fantastic, but we have poor coverage. Let's wait about 10 minutes, then we'll throw on our second coat. 10 minutes have passed and we're ready for our second coat, and we'll do it the same way. Perfect. Keeping it moving, nice and smooth. Wipe that nozzle. You will get a little splatter. That is a part of the game. Keeping that moving. Try to do the same exact direction. Those tight overpasses will really, really keep everything nice and smooth. And you can even go over it again. I want you to check the distance. I'm about a good 3 to 4 inches from the panel, and it's not hitting to the point where it's already dry by the time it hits the panel. And that's the name of the game, keeping it moving. Temperatures right now are probably the low 80s, so it's a good temperature to paint. It's in or around 6 p.m. So we know that the sun is kind of hidden or going down. So it's not going to be here drying up our paint. We don't want to fight against our environment and what it has to offer, so let's work with it. And weather and temperature is #1 factor when it comes to painting. If Mother Nature or the sun is not giving you a good time to paint, you just wait a little bit longer or pick another day, because it's not the day for you to mess up your project. Now we can see how nice it's coming out so far, but remember, this is only the base color. What we're gonna need is the clear coat to make it shine, but still, we're gonna need one more coat because it's a little stripy. So let's give it another 10 minutes. It's been 10 minutes and we're ready for the third coat. But if your project needs an extra coat, you can go ahead and do so. Now, for this final step, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do it traditionally. Since it's already got coverage, we need to make sure it's nice and even. So we're gonna go a little bit further away and we're gonna do the whole panel now. And that way we don't have any stripes because we already have that coverage. It looks just like this. We're gonna be about maybe 5 inches from the panel and we're gonna put it on not too far away. And this is gonna help make everything nice and uniform. You don't wanna do this too far away because what's gonna happen is it's gonna start to look dry and it's gonna start to look yucky. And we don't want dry, yucky metallic. We can see how nice and even it's looking, so we'll finish up over here. Perfect. You can see everything is coming together. Now, this is one can. It's about completely empty. and we covered everything with one can. I got two, but it's looking pretty good for one can, so we'll leave it at that. Let's give this good 30 minutes to dry, and then we'll go into the clear coat. We're ready for clear coat. We're gonna be using the 2K Aerospray clear coat from Eastwood. This is a two-part, a 2K product, so it's gonna be the same type of product that comes out of a spray gun. We're gonna take this red cap right here, and we're gonna find the stem at the bottom. We're gonna put it on that stem, on a hard surface, and really push it really hard down to pop that bladder. You're gonna pop the bladder, and once you pop the bladder, then you'll be able to mix the contents of these two together and start clear coating. Now for this, I'm gonna work the same quadrant method. Starting at the top, and we start at the top, we're gonna put it on 75%, and we're gonna keep it moving. Keeping it moving, getting it nice and wet. Now, don't be too concerned with this. If it looks a little bit milky at first, that is fine. Don't freak out. It will go on looking a little bit weird. Once it dries up, it gets better, trust me. Even some of the clear coat will have these dark looking spots on it from the way that the clear coat comes out of the can. Don't worry, that will clear up. Just keep on moving. Using the quadrant method, going on nice. And moving towards the front of the fender, keeping that 75% overlap. Now, timing with your flash times in between coats is very important. It's gonna give it 10 minutes to tack up, so that second coat we can lay on a little bit wetter and it's gonna stick. After 10 minutes, we're ready for the next coat, a little bit slower and a little bit wetter. We'll focus on the top again, moving nice and slow. Same overlap, the only difference is we're moving a little bit slower. Gonna keep that same quadrant going so we can focus on getting a proper overlap. And sometimes if we're pushing it too far with a can and you're inexperienced, you can go too far and then you're gonna see that it's uneven. So by focusing on the small areas as a beginner, you can really efficiently get a nice finish. And again, it's gonna look weird. Don't worry, give it time. Sometimes it will take a good hour for this to clear up, and then it will really surprise you the way it looks once it's all cleared up and how smooth and glossy it is. Now we're gonna increase our time to 15 minutes in between coats. Since we have a little bit more material on there, we want it to flash off. And I will say, it's looking pretty good, but the next coat, it's gonna look even better. Okay, it's been 15 minutes and we see the streaking here, so we're not ready yet. Let's give it another 10 minutes. Perfect, it's been a total of 25 minutes. It's ready for that third coat. We can see it's cleared up substantially. We're ready to put it on, and this is the money coat. A little bit closer and a little bit slower. Perfect, we're gonna put it on. And with these cans, there's no need to wipe the nozzle because they're a little bit higher quality than those of the Duplicolor. They don't splatter, they put it on nice and wet. They've got about maybe a 4-inch fan, and it really lays down the clear. Now keep in mind, this is as good as it's gonna get out of a can. These cans have the catalyzed clear coat, but by no means is this the actual same exact clear coat that you're gonna spray out of a gun. You see, the clear coat has to be thinned out so much to come out of this tiny little nozzle that it's not gonna be thicker like those clear coats that you get coming out of a spray can, but you can apply a couple more coats and get a very, very similar finish that holds up to the sun. It's been 3 coats total. We're gonna allow this to dry a good hour, and then we're gonna come back and check it out. Wow guys, it's been 1 hour and this thing looks phenomenal. Take a look at the finish and how beautiful and how crystal clear it is all the way through. It's got a beautiful, nice finish. You can see how smooth it is from the side. That looks just like a factory paint job. Look at the reflection that we've got out of this blue metallic. It's pretty insane, and this is something that you could do in your own home backyard, and that's why I did it right in the backyard. Now, it did come with a couple particles of dirt, and that is going to happen, and you can buff those out, so stay tuned to the end of the video because we're gonna let this dry overnight, and I'll polish those out real quick and I'll show you how to do that. But in the meantime, this thing is stunning. So let's go ahead into the garage. Now we're back here 24 hours after it's been cured, and the finish has changed just a little bit. And surely you can leave it just like this, but if you want to take it to the next level and completely smooth it out and remove some of those pesky dust nibs, you're going to need some more material and some power tools. And if you remember earlier in the video, we had the job pack that had the 1200 grit, and we're going to use it here on these little pesky dust nibs that landed in the clear coat. Once it's been cured for 24 hours, then you can do this. But do not attempt to do this anytime before that time frame, otherwise it just is not going to sand and polish properly. And just like that, we completely smoothed out these areas and we're ready for the next step for this area. But we got one more spot. Over in this area, I picked out just a little piece of dirt. When I picked it out, it left a little bit of a mark. You can see it here, how it has a small indentation. So all we want to do is flatten the clear coat in that area. Now we don't need to do this to the whole entire panel by hand. We have something else that's going to help us out to do it more efficiently. Perfect, they're all sanded, so we'll blow off the panel. We're ready for our next step. For this step, we have a starter kit that has all of the sandpaper we're gonna need to get a nice smooth finish. We're also gonna need a DA sander. Now you don't particularly need this one, but you should get one that is a 3/32, and that is the throw that you're gonna need for sanding so that you can have a nicer finish for polishing. Let's take a look at what the kit has to offer. So basically in a kit like this, you're not gonna have to worry about collecting a whole bunch of sandpaper and spending a lot of money if you have a small project. You can get a few pieces in each one of these packets and you're gonna be good to go. First thing it's gonna come with is an interface pad. That's very important. Put this on before you put the sandpaper on. And we're gonna have 5 pieces per packet. We have 3,000, 2,500, 2,000, and 1,500. We're gonna start off with 1,500. And what I love about the K-Grit system is this is a K1500, but it will cut at the same sanding speed as a P1200. So it cuts faster, but leaves a smoother scratch. Now for this step in the process, we're gonna go over the whole entire fender and we're gonna see things that you didn't see visually with your eye, but it's gonna expose little imperfections. And what we're gonna do with the sandpaper is sand and smooth those out. So when it comes to polishing, it'll be nice and smooth. That is the point of the fine grit sandpaper. We're gonna take this all the way up to 3,000 by refining the scratch. And you can do this by hand, but if you do this by hand, it's a little bit more aggressive of a sand scratch and it's kind of harder to recover using a buffer. That's why I prefer using a 3/32 sander. It leaves a nice fine finish for polishing. So we'll just take it easy on the surface and we can see the cut. It's already cutting and it's gonna leave it dull, but it's gonna give us a nice smooth finish that we're looking for. All right, good. So we used 2 pieces of 1,500 because that initial cut is gonna take a little bit more time to get through that hard surface of the clear coat. Now, once the clear coat's open, we can get in there and refine. But at this point, we want all of our dust nibs, everything completely smooth. We don't wanna do this in the next few steps because the finer the paper, the harder the time it's gonna have to cut that down nice and flat. What we're looking to do is just refine the scratch, make the scratch smoother, smaller, so we can polish it. So at this point, we can see the surface got a little bit of a shine almost, but not too much. As we do the next step, it's going to get shinier and shinier and easier to polish. So let's go ahead and get into that. Next up, we're gonna be using K2000. Next up, we're going to be using K2500. And for the last step, we're going to be using K3000. The next step, you're gonna need a rotary polisher. This is a non-negotiable. You're not gonna get that shine back or take those scratches out unless you have a rotary polisher. Now, for this specific one, it is a Makita, but you can get a Harbor Freight one that's much cheaper. We're gonna be using a compound for this, and this is going to cut the scratches and smooth them out and bring back some shine. Let me show you. We'll place some compound on the surface, and this is a 3M perfect finishing system. It's a little bit pricey, but it works. Step 1 white pad goes with the compound. You'll first want to get it into the surface at a low RPM and work the product into the clear coat. We want to work about a 12-inch area. Then we can increase the speed. And we'll add a little bit more product. We'll use some detailing spray and take a look at the surface. And look at that glossy finish compared to the area that still needs polishing. So let's finish it up. And look at that. That is a beautiful finish. Nice and glossy, completely smooth. But we can't stop there. If we were to take this in the sun, it would look really streaky. We need to polish it with a fine polisher. Now we're at the final step, the polishing. And if you're gonna commit to sanding and polishing, you're gonna need to get the proper tools. Again, there'll be cheaper options in the description if you wanna get the job done. I'm using the Milwaukee because I use it day in and day out, and I love the finish it brings. And I also will be using a fine polish. Now this is just the same exact way. We're gonna work a small area, and then we'll check out the results. Now let's wipe it off and let's reveal the finish we've been waiting for. And there it is, guys. Check it out how smooth this fender is. It's got absolutely no defects in it. You can see that we've completely removed the little defects that we had land in the finish, and the defect over here is completely gone as well. It's nice and smooth. As well as the whole entire fender, it's got a beautiful finish to it, but I want to check it out outside and see what it really looks like when the sun is shining. Oh my, look at this. Wow. And once we have it outside, you can see the clarity of the clear coat once it's been sanded and polished. Look at the clouds and look at the reflection of the finish. This is a fantastic job right out of a spray can. And once again, you can see that our defects are completely smooth and completely removed, and that is what sanding and polishing will be able to do for you. But this is a job that you can do yourself using the knowledge in this video. I would like to know exactly what your project is. And I don't want to hear that your project is going to be spraying your whole car with cans. This is great for small projects just like we have here. The cans will add up and cost a lot, probably more than it would cost to get the equipment to paint your car the right way if you're doing a bigger job. But for the smaller jobs like this, you can get a crystal clear finish, and we showed you right here. Now, if you're wondering what it took to get the job done, we needed a half a can of primer, 1 can of color, and 1 full can of clear coat. And that's all you'll need to get this job done. And I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you're interested in more content just like this, go ahead and hit the like button and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can get all the updates from Paint Society. Guys, this is Brian from Paint Society reminding you, don't overthink it. It's just paint. I'll see you guys on the next episode.